Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're stuck to Chulin daf Yud Ches. We are going to begin on Yud Ches Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top. Rav Huna. Hai tabcha deloit sart sakina kamei chacham. Let's say you have a butcher or a sheichet, and he probably knows what he's doing because that's his profession. But for whatever reason, he doesn't show his knife to the local chacham, in which you're supposed to show kavod to the chacham by showing him the knife. Misham tinin lei. We're actually going to excommunicate this person. We're going to put him in chayrim for showing this lack of respect. But Rabbi Eimer ma'averinan lei umachrazinan abisra detarfa he. So Rava apparently disagrees and says we're going to remove him from his job. He's not going to be able to sell meat anymore, and we're going to say that his meat is treif, which seems a lot more strict. The Gemara says, "Well, please, it's actually not a machlokas. Kan b'shenimsa sakina yafa, kan b'shaloi nimsa sakina yafa." So if we check his knife and his knife was fine, which means the shechita was actually good, so we will still put him in chayrim, we'll excommunicate him because he did show disrespect to the chacham, as we see in the third paragraph of Masechtas Brachos in numerous places that we will be menaden al kavod harav. But in the event that we inspect his knife and there's problems, then obviously we're not just going to stop there. We're going to say he's obviously not a good butcher. We're going to say he can't continue, and his meat is treif. Fine. Ravino Eimer heichadu nimsa sakina yafa. So let's say we're talking about a situation where you don't find a good knife. There's a bunch of pegimos. So besams then mimas meis le biparata. Then we're going to put perish. We're going to put waste matter all over his food, which obviously makes it inedible. So even if you're going to say it's treif, but something which is treif is still mutar b'hana, and therefore you could still sell it to an akum. However, if we find again that the knife is not good, we're going to go so strict, we're going to make it even inedible that an akum will not buy it. So again, we have this very story that this person didn't give his knife over to the chacham. So shamte, they put him in chayrim. The avre, they removed him from his job. So they went to him. Person, let's analyze the matters of this butcher. Maybe there's some schus, something good about this guy. The tolube tafli, that he has, maybe there's something good. Says Rashi, after all, there's he has banim katanim toim olav. He has little kids, right? He's a family man, so he has bills to pay. So even though technically this is the law, but we also are going to have a little rachmanis on him because of his family. So bud gravash sakine, they checked his knife and him says yafa, and his knife is good. The akshrei, and therefore they said that the meat was kosher. So apparently what that means, as Rashi points out, is that when they removed him, it was only al tanai because they thought his knife was not good. But now that his knife is good, so then at least his meat's kosher. Aren't you concerned of what the matter of Rabbi Bar Chinana, that he removed him and now you're going to reinstate him? That seems like more disrespect. Actually, I'm doing his chus. In other words, interestingly enough, he is the one who asked us to look into this matter to see if somehow he could be reinstated. Omaramba Barhuna, which is pretty unbelievable. Shane Talusha. Let's say you have a tooth which is detached from the jaw of a person or an animal, excluding if it was attached. Vitziparin Talusha, or a nail which is like a fingernail which is detached. You can't use saws and sickles. Vishinayim v'sipayin. It says beferish you can't use teeth, you can't use nails. And vishin chinkin, because of the issue of their chinik. They're gonna rip it apart. They're not going to do it properly. So Gemara answers shena lo kasha habachad habatarti. One tooth is okay, but two teeth is a problem because it's like a pagam and a knife, because there's gonna be like a bump between the teeth. So if it's attached, it's a problem. If it's detached, then it is okay. Okay. Let's look at question 13. Tnan, b'chol shaychdin, except for teeth and nails. So what's the Gemara's answer in the stira? So tooth on a tooth is not a question. One tooth, two teeth. Two teeth, no. One tooth, okay. Nail and nail. If it's tolish, it's okay. Mechuber, it is not. Okay. It's a shtikumando because the quote of chutz mamagel, kotzer v'megira have nothing to do with tolish or mechuber. It makes sense that the tooth has to do with the situation of it there being pagimos. But it's interesting that we say the same thing when it comes to the nail. Like, Ziparin is a totally different reason. Okay, let's see the next Mishnah. Person is using this sickle. Now, this sickle, all of the blades of a sickle are going in one direction. Obviously, if you go in the opposite direction, it's going to tear. But if you go in the smoother direction, in one way, it may not be problematic. So, let's say you go in a forward motion. So again, it's not going to, as Rashi says, enu koras, it's not going to tear the simanim. So we still have a machlokas that's not allowed. According to Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel says it's okay. However, if you would smooth out the teeth, then it's like any other knife. Obviously, the name sickle we don't care about. We care about the actual blade and whether it has pagimos. Says Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, Beis Hillel. Even though Beis Hillel said that it is kosher, all he's saying, not that you could eat it, right? You can't actually eat this because, as Rashi says, if all you need to do is go in this and that motion, then the other motion is going to rip it. So we are scared that you may even a little bit go in the opposite direction, and therefore mamish be an issue. So therefore you can't eat it. However, we at least will call it a shechita to the extent that it's not like a neveil, so it's going to be like the din of like a treifa, so it's not going to have din of tuma. It says interesting language of puzzle and kosher, which typically is talking about the shechita itself. Look at the language of matirin means it's like mutter completely, but this language instead has to do with shechita. So just say it that way, which is even more clear. So, not really the greatest diuk of our Mishnah, but nonetheless, that's the answer. Okay, so let's see this next Mishnah. In order to see this next Mishnah, we will finally be able to start using this Sefer, which is called Chulin Illuminated. This Mishnah is going to teach us the dinim of Hagrama, that when it comes to the shechita must be done in the proper place. So we know, as opposed to a bird which the shechita is done only in with one siman, it could be different when it comes to different karbanos, also chatasov, we'll get to that soon. But with chulin, and we're talking about an animal, you have to cut through two simanim. And here we're going to be focusing specifically on the kana. We're going to be focusing on the trachea. Now, the trachea, also known as the windpipe, is the pipe in which, obviously, like people, that's how animals breathe, and oxygen goes through the trachea into the reyes, into the lungs. So that is one of the simanim that needs to be cut through. So we have over here a few different terms, and I'll just hold it up over here for a moment. So we're gonna be looking at this picture for a few moments. So it mentions we have over here the kana, which is the trachea itself. We have the koiva, which is a hat, but it's this upper part, which is called the thyroid cartilage. And then we have a couple other parts higher than this, including the koiva katan, also known as the epiglottis. So down here it talks about the tabas hagadoila, which is going to be very important. The tabas, this is the tabas hagadoila. So you have the kana as the animal goes going up the animal. This is the tabas hagadoila. And then we have the shipa koiva, the slope of the thyroid cartilage. It's a sheepoid because you can see it curves. So this is the thyroid cartilage, and this is the roof, the chuda de kuva, the roof of the thyroid cartilage. So this is the first part that we're going to understand. Okay, now we also have something called tabois, rings. So this is the same thing, but you'll notice that toward the bottom there are rings, they're tabois. And on this next page, it tells us an important detail about these tabois, which is I'm going to be reading right here in the box. The box tells us as follows regarding the tabois. The tabos rings do not completely encircle the kana, trachea, but rather cover only most of the circumference. So as you can see here, it goes around, but it doesn't go encircled completely. It's almost like into this level, almost like the letter U. The back is covered by a membrane called the ritzuas basar. And in contrast, the tabas hagadoila is a complete ring and actually thickens in width at the back of the kana. So again, we're going to see that some people feel that the proper shechita needs to be done with it at the tabas hagadoila, which is the upper part, and not the tabois, which are over here. We'll see exactly. Maybe you could, or maybe in between the tabos. But regardless, this is a situation where you cut through. You're not really cutting through all the tabos because the top, the tabos are not completely a circle, as opposed to the tabois gedola, in which it is completely surrounded. So, with that brief introduction, we're going to see the Gemara, the Mishnah rather. So, Hashoichet mitoicha tabois. This all has to do again with the proper makam hashchita. We're going to see a lot of these Rashis. This is obviously quite important to understand this new concept. So if someone shechs within the tabois, which again, let's just get ourselves acclimated over here, and this may be even a better picture. So you can see all the way down are the tabois, the rings. So if a person who shechs that from that part of the animal, the shirba mali hachut pneikula, and he leaves over a small amount on all around shchita sukshera, it's still considered to be a good shchita. So let's look at Rashi. So betabois hagadoyla shehi el yoina lekulan kaimer shein tabas lomala himena. So when we're talking about the tabas hagadoyla, that is the large tabois, which is this one. There's the tabas hagadoyla, which completely does surround, but then you have all these kanim, you have these tabois rather over here, which are lower on the animal. So if a person shechs on these tabois, and again, Rashi understands this, that it's talking about the tabois hagadoyla, which is that above the other tabois, shein tabas mal himena. There's no tabois higher than the tabas hagadoyla. And you left over a little bit, l'tzat harosh, shalohita l'sakin l'tzas min hatabois, l'tzat harosh, el hachut, kloimer koldehu. You didn't shech straight through the tabas hagadoyla. Im kaidim shegamres kula, if before you finished cutting through the tabas gedola, higrim es asakal satarosh, you ended up bringing the knife higher than the proper place, the yotzimin hatabois, and it went outside of the tabois area, the gomer es ashchita l'malam and tabois, and you finish it above it, shein makam shchita she hagrama, which is not the right place. That is considered to be hagrama. So you can't go above this ring only once you completely cut through it. It's okay, but the problem is you can't cut through it and partially, and then go also partially up above the tabas hagedola. Okay, fine. So it says Rashi shenemer l'moshe mesin al shenishchat rov hakana b'makam shchita. Even though it's true, what do you mean you already cut rov? It doesn't matter. Even if you cut through rov, pasli rabbanan hoyel v'gamru b'psul. Pretty amazing. So even though you cut properly through the tabas hagedola, but if you could finish up too high b'makam sul, then it's not good. Okay. Rav Yosef Rav Yehuda Omer Malichut al Pnei Ruba. The majority, as long as the majority is in the Tabais HaGedolah, then it's actually kosher. Says Rashi, Im Shirba Malichut HaSaira Min HaTabas L'Tzad HaRoish al Pnei Rov HaTabos Kloimer. Says Rashi, Shechatach Rov HaKana. You cut the majority already within the Tabais, and we're talking about the Tabais HaGedolah, Uvemiyuta Higrim, but some of it went high up. V'yatzim el sadarosh went like toward the head. Become a shchita la malim and kasher de beruba is kasheres la shchita, which makes sense, right? Because all you're doing is cutting. So this Mishnah is not at this point talking about the kanim. We're just talking about the specifically. I keep saying kanim, which is the kana is the trachea itself. Our Mishnah is not talking about the tabois. We're talking specifically about the tabas hagedolah, which is higher up. This is the highest ring, and you're supposed to cut through the tabas hagedolah. That's the proper place. So the machlokas of our Mishnah is simple. Do you have to cut through the entire thing? But if you only cut through a rov, even though you only really need to cut through rov, but after you cut through rov, you continue to get into the higher part of the animal. So then in that situation, it's a machlokas. One would say it's pasul, hachmosh mesina, as Rashi quoted, or since you already cut through rov, then it's fine. It's not an issue. Okay. So Rav Shmuel Devativayu halacha Rav Yosi bar Yehuda. So he says the halacha is like him, which is of course the more lenient opinion that as long as you cut through rov, then it is fine. Even if you cut afterwards through other meat, it's not a problem. Now his statement of being lenient was el b'tabas hagedolah. As again, it's not so clear from the Mishnah because it just says the word tabois, but it's talking about the tabas hagedolah. Hoyel umakefes es kol hakana, because it goes completely around, right? Avol b'shar tabos lo. However, when it comes to the other tabois, which only go like a U, but doesn't go all the way around, so then that's not okay. Apparently, he says that cutting through the tabois in general, which is below the tabas hagedolah, will not be allowed. So good Rashi, shchitasuk sheira, and shchitasuk sheira. If you cut through the tabois, it's not good. B'soichen klal, elabein tabois wa tabois. Interesting. What you could do, as Rashi says, you can't cut the tabois themselves, but you'll notice that there's like breaks in between each of these rings, which perhaps can be better seen in this picture here. So if you would cut in between them, then that would be allowed. You just can't cut the tabois themselves. Which, beginning to understand the intricacies of shchita here. Says Rashi, the kivan de'ein makifin as kol hakana kedeprecious. As we said, it doesn't go all the way around. Love kanin ninhu. This is not considered to be part of the trachea. It's not considered to be the windpipe. A pipe is completely around. So the kana, which again it goes all is the pipe, the trachea, the air pipe, if you will, the windpipe. It's got to go all the way around. But when we're talking about tabais, only like that doesn't count. At least according to this opinion. Yafagav the makif and ruba. Even though the truth is it does go around rove, so I thought all you have to do is cut rove of a sim is enough. The only time he holds ruba kakula is hanimil b'makam shchita. It has to be in the right place. The shachan ruba. So if you shecht, let's say the rove of the tabasa gedayla, well, ham milstam reading ruba kakula. Therefore, even if it went above, it's okay. Av l'shavim makam kashul l'shchita makam high. Time alone, reading ruba kakula. Tabais will ikri kana. Right, so the other rings they don't completely go around the kana, so it isn't considered to be makam ashchita. Right, so that's the reason. So it has to be the tabas hagedoyla only. Okay, is that true that you can't cut through the other tabais, and that's considered to be hagram of a sign? Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda Oimers. We continue to Amud Beis. So let's see on Yud Chesed Beis. So it says Hashaykhet Bishar Tabais. Let's say you shecht the other rings below the Tabasa Gedayla. Aval Pi She'ein Makivois, even though as we know it doesn't go around, as Kol Hakana, it doesn't go around the entire trachea. Hoyo Makifa says Rov Hakana, it does go through the majority. Shchidas L'Shera. So we say that it's kosher, right? So umigremes psula. Look in Rashi. I feel ruba b'teicha tabais. Even if the majority was within the ring, umiyuta lamalo matabais agadayla, and the minority was above it, above the tabas agadayla. Umilsa b'alpin nafshihi. This is actually a separate statement. V'stamahi v'rabbanan kamrila. Umigremes psula. What is that sentence? This is totally like off the side, but it's telling us, based on this machlokas, now like Rav Yossi, rather like the Shittas Rabbanan, that if you cut the tabasa gedoyla, so you can cut the tabois, and it says over here it's kosher, as long as you cut the rove of them. When it comes to tabasa gedoyla, even if you only cut the majority and the rest goes above, it's possible. So here Reb Chanina ben Antonigunus al Hamigaremesh Sheira. Anyway, he actually disagrees, which sounds like the Shita Rabbi Yossi. But again, we're back to our question. The kasha is, it says clearly that you could cut through the tabais. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda Tarti Kaimer. There's two things that are being said. Look at Rashi. There's two things. First of all, when it comes to cutting through the kana, when it comes to cutting through the windpipe, there is this concept of, as long as you did the majority, you're good. As long as you did the majority, it's okay. Regarding these lower rings, whether that's the right place, this is also, we'll say, ruba kakula. So actually, it's a big chiddush, and therefore Taki is saying that it is good. Rabbi Shmuel Savri Kavasi Bechada Upagla Bechada. Rabbi and Shmuel agree in one regarding that, as Rashi says, the chatichas ruba b'makam shchita kechatichas kula. He holds ruba kakula when it comes to shechting. He disagrees when it comes to the shar tabois. When it comes to the other rings, whether that's considered to be makam shchita, and even though all there is rove, right? So if you cut through the whole tabois, which is rove of the kana, do we say ruba kakula? Well, the problem is that because it doesn't surround it, that's not considered to be the kana, and therefore because of that, according to them, they argue with that opinion. So it's true. According to everyone, cutting through the tabas hagedolos is good. If you cut straight through the tabas hagedolos, is good. The machlokas is if you cut through the majority of the tabas hagedolos, then you went up top. There's also machlokas stam if you cut through the tabois. Okay. says he didn't. It says he didn't say it. So says Rashi, "Hachikam Rabbi Shmuel, v'av Rabbi Yosef lo yomer alma taima didika yomer." He's saying their own reasoning. So Hachikamer, halacha kamayso b'tabasa gedayla. The halacha is like him regarding to the tabasa gedayla. Again, talking about cutting through the majority, then the top going up. Then halacha kamayso b'shar tabayis. But the halacha is not like him when it comes to the other rings, whether or not it is good. So ki salak Rav Zera ochel megremes de Rabbi Shmuel. He ate doesn't mean something which was mamish hagrama, but as Rashi says, shchuta b'toich shar hatabois, he shechted with through these tabois. The chashule inhu hagrama, that some people would call it hagrama. The oimer shar hatabois la makam shchita inhu. The chol shelo b'makam shchita kari hagrama. So this is considered to be not the right place, but according to him, no, he actually ate from that. It doesn't mean, again, he ate treif, okay, but it just means that that's not the makam shchita, which is technically supposed to be the tabasa gedolah, but he still ate from that which was shechted by the tabois. Amrulei, so Amrulei love ma'atred Rabbi Shmuelat. Are you not from their town? So if they did this, so then why don't you? So who? Man Amra, who said this? Yosef ben Chia. Yosef bar Chia, Mechuli Alma Gomer. He learns from everyone, not from the Makoim. Right? So, says Rashi, who said this milsa in the name of Rabbi Shmuel? It was Yosef bar Chia said. So, Mechuli Alma Gomer, says Rashi, B'Shema Shama Domer Mepi Acher. So, what the point is, who said, even though it's true, oh, he came from this place, that doesn't mean he actually heard it from them. Shodikdik b'devarim, he's not so particular in words, kamo shenemru. So, the reality is, since he learned from all these other people, it's not necessarily from there. So, Shama Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef heard this whole back and forth, and Ikbit, as often Rab Yosef does, he gets upset. Omer Anamakul Yama Gamrina, what you're saying that this was just learned from everyone. Anam Rabbi Yehuda Gamrina was learned from him. Do you feel speaking the Gavri Gars? Says Rashi, Kishai Oimrim Lo Shemua. When someone, when they say to him a matter, Yamrua Lo Shachach Mimi Shama. Sometimes he forgets from whom he heard it from. Rabbi Yehuda b'Shematu Kabli Mepi Rabbeinu v'Safik Hayib Yado. He was unsure. Imaploni Kabla, Imaploni Kabla. As sometimes we see, he says Safik Mishmei the Rab, Safik Mishmei this. So sometimes he's uncertain of who he heard it from. Yom Rabbi Yehuda Rav Yirmiyah Bar Abba Safik Mishmei the Rab, Safik Mishmei the Shmuel. Shloishim Atirin as a Bechor. So this, we see this doubt over here. But 3 people mater the Bechor with a mum. We've got to look in Rashi for this. These are 3 hedyotos, like a based in. They will mater Bechor lishchait b'medina, to do the shchita outside of Beis Hamikdash. B'mum, once it develops a blemish, before v'goli l'chol shehu mum, and everyone sees that's a mum. As the Gemara in Bechayda says, they feel mum hagolui. Even if it's a blum which everyone sees and it's obvious, still you need to show it to a chacham. It's still a requirement that you still need a chacham to see it. So, if 3 people matered this bechor, which had a mum, but makam she'in mumcha, it will be allowed to be done in a place where there's no mumcha. Okay, so that's the end of that. So, Rav Zera, Leisle, Nisan Love, Chamra Makam Shelt Misham, Chamra Makam Shahal Chasham. Understand why does Rav Zera above say, okay, I'm not going to necessarily accept this stringency because from that location to that location, you're supposed to accept the stringencies of both places. This is Gemara in Masechtas Pesachim. So Makam Shnagu. So if you don't do malacha on Erev Pesach, so maybe you go to a city that does malacha on Erev Pesach, or vice versa, you're supposed to accept the stringency of either way. So why doesn't he say the same thing here? The only time we say we accept the stringencies of where we're going to is Mabavel, Eretz Israel. If we're going in the same country, even Eretz Israel Bavel. Also, if we're going from Eretz Israel to Bavel, so then we will embrace the traditions there of a Mabavel Eretz Israel. However, if you're going from Bavel to Eretz Israel, Kiban de'anan kafinin lahu, since we bend to them, Avdinan kavosaychu, we will do like them. So, therefore, we don't always necessarily accept all the stringencies if we're going from Bavel to Eretz Israel. We'll accept the other opinion, even if it is Mekel. Says Rashi, L'bnei Eretz Israel, L'kiddush HaChodesh, L'ibor, right? When it comes to a lot of things, L'ibor Hashana, we embrace what goes on there. And L'dini Kanaso Shin Smicha B'Bavel, so Bavel is weaker regarding certain things, like we see in the beginning of Masechtas Bava Kama, that they can't administer kanas, which has halachic ramifications, etc. over there. So, as it's also brought down in Horius over here, that dini kanasos ain't smicha b'bavel. So therefore, we'll do like them. Says Rashi, Kiaz lina gabayhu, when we're there in Israel, they ain't anu srichin l'chal kavod mim kamenu in Eretz Israel havi achelei. So therefore, even if our custom is not to eat it in this particular type of shechita, but we will embrace it. We will do that. Question 14. Reb Zvid achel migremes to Rabbi Shmuel. So Reb Zvid was lenient, right? Reb Zera, Reb Zera ate, even though, as we said, it was not necessarily according to the right place. That they shechted the tabois. In Bavel, they don't do that. In Eretz Yisrael, they are lenient, and he ate that. So the question is, what does it mean, and why would he allow? Why was that okay? So first of all, he ate from shchuta b'tashar hatabois. Rabbi Shmuel hold in makam shchita el b'tabasa gedolah. Rabbi Shmuel are strict. That is only the tabasa gedolah. However, since the Bavel Eretz Israel Ozil, since he went from Bavel to Israel, v'kaifim b'nei Bavel Eretz Israel, so therefore, that's one reason why he embraced the laws of Israel. And then we have another answer, which is Rav Ashi Yomer Afil Teim Bavel Eretz Israel Hanimil Heicha de Daitul Lachser. Rav Zera and Daitul Lachser. His intention was to stay in Israel. He's going to make Aliyah, and therefore, because of that, he's going to embrace the laws of Israel, even if they were more makel. And therefore, he ate from the shchita from the tabois. He wasn't strictly like Rav and Shmuel that only allowed from the tabasa gedolah. Okay, so that's the din, that Rav and Shmuel only allowed the shchita by the tabas gedolah, not the lower tabois. But in Israel, they allowed this too. Okay, all right. However, when it came to these sages that came from Mechuzah, which was Bavel, now apparently he's quoting Rav and Shmuel, saying that Megremes of the Tabas is good, right? Not just the Tabas Agadah. So Nahara, which is basically, as Rashi says, Kol Nahar Mispashid B'Makom Shehu Ragel Sham. Every river spreads out to where it's supposed to go. In other words, everyone has their own customs. Upashte, and it flows to those different places. Okay, so that's the idea. There's different customs, basically. Rav Shimon ben Lakish Achshir b'chud de kuva. Okay, so let's slow down for a bit. Let's see if maybe there's another question. Let's see. T.A. For Yud Ches. T.A. 17. Nope. No question at all for that. TB 20. Nope. No questions. Okay. Let's keep on moving then. So now the question is, so we talked about the tabois and the tabasa gedoyla. So now we have another point. Rav Shimon ben Lakish Achshir b'chuda dekuva. So what's the chuda dekuva? So let's go back to our picture book, if I can call it that. So the let's see which picture is better. So we have the kova. Let's get the language. The chuda dekuva. Okay. So the chuda dekuva is literally translated as at the top of the hat, but it's really the roof of the thyroid cartilage, which is over here. You can see where it's pointing. Now this is an unbelievable chiddush apparently, because we were talking about cutting through the tabas gedoyel over here, and now he's talking about the chuda dekuva, which is way up here. Right? Apparently he says that this is allowed, which is hard to understand, but that's what it's saying. So let's get through this and understand it. So Karle Rav Yochanan Gisa Gisa. So Rav Yochanan said Gisa Gisa, says Rashi, Hagas Hagas, claimer Yos Medai, that's too high up to be kosher. There's no way that you could be cutting through the chuda dekuva, the roof of the thyroid cartilage. That doesn't possibly work. Jamar Papi Mishmeda Rava Pag B'chiti Treifa. If you reach the chitim, then it is treif already. So what are the chiti? So this is going to be the next page. The chiti, you can see up top over here. The chiti is over here, which is translated as the vocal cords. So it says in the English, which is probably hard for you to read, but I'm going to read this top. The chiti, the vocal cords inside the kova, the thyroid cartilage of a deer. The view is from below, looking through the kana, the trachea, upward toward the mouth. So this gives you like a little bit of an idea of what we're talking about. So that's what we're referring to when we're talking about the chiti. So you have and also you have the picture of the tabas gedoyla over here, and then you have the chiti. So if you already cut so high that you already hit the vocal cords, then at that point it's going to already be trefa. Okay, fine. It says Rashi says it's eitzel hakoiva. Okay, so it's trefa. So iboilhu. Pug of a nug of a hen doesn't mean that you reached it and you actually hit it. Dichsev yifka bo b'yamos. Aldim a pug of a lo nuga. K'dichsev yifku bo malchei elokim. So the question is, how far up? Does it mean that you only got up to it? It's like ad yad machal, you hit it or didn't hit it. So in mo'emar apab mishmeda rava shiar b'chite kshera. If you left over the chitim, which means even if you by just touching it, it is going to be kosher, which is mashma that even if you do hit the chitim, that it's going to be kosher according to him. Amar Rabba Meimar Bar Mar Yanuka, Havi Kamida Rav Yochana Rav Chia Bereda Rabab Yav Yarmile, and he said Shir Bechitik Shera. Again, if you reach the vocal cords up here, then it's still going to be kosher, which is again a pretty big kula. Armele Ravino Ravashi, Armele Rav Shimon Mitzur Ba, Mesuvra, Iklamar Zuchul Atrin, the Dara Shir Bechitik Shera. So again, he says it's good. Ravashi Amr Paga Bechitik Shera. No, only if you're Paga. You only reached it, which means you didn't actually cut through it. Shir Bechiti Treifa. However, if you taka touched it, then not good. Says Rashi, Paga means v'lo naga, samach lahem. It's very close, but you didn't actually hit it. So it's a question if it's just Paga or Naga. So it's not so clear. The Hilchasa, as we continue to Tessamud Aleph, Mishipoi Kaiva Lamatik Shera. From the Shipoi Kavoa. So what is the Shipoi Kaiva? So this we can see over here now. Because, again, we had one opinion that it was kosher even all the way up here by the Chuda de Kuva, which is unbelievably high. And he said, no, that's too high. But we now hear this opinion of the Shipoi Kaiva. The Shipoi means it's slanted, it's like a slope, which is sloped. So what does that mean? So this is above the Tabasa Gedolah. So even though, like Rabbi Shmuel said, you have to cut into the Tabasa Gedolah, the truth is that maybe you can even go to the Shipoi Kaiva, which is the slope of the thyroid cartilage. So, and that would, according to this opinion, still be okay. As long as it's below. The Hainu de Shir Bechiti, which is the same place as the Shir Chiti of the vocal cords. Rav Nachman Asher B'Shipoi Kaiva Olmata below. Amalei Rav Chanan Bar Rav Katin Rav Nachman Kaman Lo Karabanav Lo Karav Yosi Rabbi Yehuda. Apparently he doesn't hold like either of them. Look at the Rashi. Kainim Shiyaskel HaKaiva L'Shafa L'Alus Ksher, before it begins to slope. Okay, and from there on it's treif. Okay, so that's what it's saying. It doesn't mean that part, but it means from the point where it turns. Armele ana. So it doesn't sound like a Rabban or Rabbi Yosef or Rabbi Yehuda, because we just said that if you would cut from the Tabasa Gedolah, the rove, and then the minority of it goes northward or up, so then it's a machlokas. What do you mean it's a machlokas? Maybe you could even cut there l'chatchila. Normally, another chiluk yadana, biluk yadana. I don't know this and that, right? There's I don't know the Rabbanan. I don't know this shita. Ana shmaita yadan. I know a shmaita. Yom Rav Chiba Rabbi Rabbi Yochanan Yom Rav Samsei Yom Rav Abba Bar Zavda Yom Rav Chanina Yom Rav Samsei was Rav Yaakov Bar Idi Yom Rav Yeshua ben Levi Mishipoi Kaiva Lamatik Sheira. I heard that from the Shipoi Kaiva, from the slant of the this cartilage, that it is kosher. Yom Yeshua ben Levi Megremis de Rabbana. Period. So that's what I heard. So that's the reason why I'm quoting it. So you're right. I don't know what those shitas are. Okay. Yom Yeshua ben Levi Megremis de Rabbanan Ksheira or Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. So a person who does hagrama, the minority of the kana, after you shechted already the rove, according to Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, it's going to be okay, because as we mentioned, according to him, even as long as you cut into the Tabasa Gedolah, the majority, and then the minority continues to go up, it's okay, because we go Ruba Kakula there. So therefore, Migremes the Rabbanan, the Hagrama, which is the Rabbanan, is Ksher according to Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. Again, says Rashi, Shachad Rubel Malum in Hatabas Okula, so that's fine. But Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Ksheil Rabbi Chanina ben Antonigus, so Pshita. So Mahu Detem Rabbi Chanina ben Antonigus and Rabbanan Koi Kamash Malon, says Rashi. Avol Heicha de Kul Malum in Hatabas Psula. Maybe if the whole thing is about Hatabas, would be puzzle. Nemachanami Imkain Hiad Aleha Miboile. It should say Hiad Aleha. They testified upon him. Says Rashi, "Min mahad v'naket al megremes, shemamad tervai megremes del el minei koi." Is going on both. Okay, and at the end of the day, the hilchos of Rav Chanina ben Antonigus the koi Rav Nachman Kavase. So halacha taka is like Rav Chanina ben Antonigus, because we find that Rav Nachman holds like him. What is that? It says Rashi, the achshem shipoi koi v'lamata. Kida Amran, that he allows you to shecht even from the shipoi kaiva. So there's a lot going on over here. But just again, we had a machlokas regarding cutting through the kanim, whether that works at all. whether, according to Rabbi, that's in Eretz Yisrael they did, and in Rav and Shmuel, the Bnei Bavel only cut through the Tabas HaGedolah area. Now the Shipui Koiva we just said is allowed, provided that it is, using the language that Rashi said, Shipui Kavot Lomata. So from the Shipui Koiva, which is over here, down is okay. So in other words, even if you would cut a little bit beyond the Tabas HaGedolah, then halacha would be okay. So that's a pretty big chiddush. Question 1. Mehi Ashkita Marchiva B'Yoser. What is like the furthest place you can shecht regarding it not being an issue of hagrama? So Reish Lakish said, B'chuda de koiva, dahainu be'el yoinish shel shipur hakori koiva, right, which was way high, which was pretty surprising. We ended up saying that no, that's not good. The hilchos of mamakam shemaske lishafa, to where it begins to slant, l'alos ksher misham halon treifa, but higher than that is too high, and that will not be okay. Okay, and that is it. Adkan.